It's not that they don't care about you, it's that their first loyalty is to emotional safety, even when that safety is just distance. And this is the truth that breaks your heart and sets you free at the same time. Because when you love an avoidant, you keep searching for the moment where they finally choose you the way you choose them. You keep waiting for the day your patience turns into security, your communication turns into consistency, your love turns into a home they stop running from. And when it doesn't happen, you start telling yourself the worst story, that you were not enough, that they never cared, that you were easy to leave. But the deeper truth is often more complicated. They can care and still run. Because their first loyalty is not to the relationship, it is to the feeling of not being emotionally overwhelmed. Emotional safety for an avoidant is not always warmth. It's not always closeness. It's not always connection. Emotional safety for them is control. It is the ability to regulate their own nervous system by creating distance whenever they feel exposed. It is the ability to exit intensity before intensity turns into vulnerability. It is the ability to keep their inner world private so nobody can touch the parts of them that feel tender, messy, or afraid. And if that strategy protected them once, if distance saved them from shame, from criticism, from unpredictable love, from being swallowed by someone else's needs, then they become fiercely loyal to that strategy, even when the person in front of them is not the enemy. That's why you can be gentle and still trigger them. You can be loving and still overwhelm them. You can be consistent and still make them feel trapped. Not because your love is wrong, but because closeness activates the part of them that associates intimacy with danger. You're offering what they say they want, and their nervous system is reacting like you're asking them to step into fire. So they do what they've always done. They pull away, they shut down, they go quiet, they become busy. They act like your needs are too much, not necessarily because you are too much, but because their internal alarm system is blaring. And here is what makes it so painful for you. Their loyalty to safety can look like loyalty to you until it doesn't. In the good moments, they can be affectionate, present, even tender. They can say the right things. They can make you feel chosen. But the moment emotional depth is required, the moment repair is needed, the moment a conversation touches something vulnerable, their loyalty switches back to the thing that feels safest to them, distance. And in that moment you feel abandoned, because you are. You are left holding the emotion alone. You are left carrying the weight of the connection. You are left trying to make sense of a love that seems to disappear the moment it's tested. That is why it can feel like they don't care what you do, because your efforts are landing in a system that is prioritizing protection over connection. You can communicate beautifully, but if their body interprets emotional honesty as threat, they will hear your words as pressure. You can be patient, but if their body interprets expectations as captivity, they will experience your patience as a silent demand. You can be supportive, but if their body interprets needing as weakness, they will interpret your support as a reminder that intimacy requires something from them. And when they feel that something, they retreat because retreat is their regulation. Now, this is where you have to be compassionate without becoming confused. Their loyalty to emotional safety doesn't mean they never loved you. It means their love is filtered through fear. It means their caring is real, but their capacity is limited. It means they might miss you, but missing you is not the same as being able to show up for you. It means they might think about you, but thinking about you is not the same as holding you with consistency. It means they might want closeness, but wanting closeness is not the same as being able to tolerate the vulnerability closeness requires. And if you've been the kind of person who tries harder when things get hard, you can start doing something dangerous. You start making their fear your responsibility. You start telling yourself, if I just say it differently, if I just give them more space, if I just ask for less, if I just stay calm, if I just become easier, then they will feel safe and finally choose me. But that is where you lose yourself, because you start shrinking your needs to fit inside their comfort zone. You start living on the edge of your own truth. You start editing your emotions because you don't want to trigger withdrawal. You start carrying the relationship alone because you're afraid that if you stop carrying it, it will collapse. This is why the word safety can be misleading, because you can create safety for them by becoming smaller. But that safety is built on your silence, your self-denial, your emotional hunger. And that is not love. That is a bargain where you pay with your peace so they can avoid discomfort. Real safety is mutual. Real safety means both people can be human. Both people can have needs. Both people can speak. Both people can make mistakes and repair. Real safety does not require one person to swallow themselves to keep the other person calm. So when you realize their first loyalty is to emotional safety, you stop taking their withdrawal as a verdict on your worth. You stop reading their shutdown as proof that you are unlovable. You stop blaming yourself for not being easy enough. Because the truth is, you could be perfect, and if their nervous system is loyal to distance, they will still choose distance when intimacy feels too real. That is not about your value. That is about their coping strategy. And this is the moment your power returns, because you stop trying to love someone's fear. You stop trying to be the exception to their pattern. You stop chasing a person who keeps choosing regulation over relationship. You start asking a different question, not how do I make them feel safe, but is this relationship safe for me? Not how do I prove my love, but is my love being respected? Not how do I get them to stay, but what do I need to feel held? Because caring is not enough. Chemistry is not enough. Missing you is not enough. The relationship requires capacity. It requires the willingness to tolerate discomfort for the sake of connection. It requires accountability. It requires repair. And if their first loyalty is to emotional safety, they have to learn a new definition of safety, one where safety is not escape, safety is presence. One where safety is not distance, safety is communication. One where safety is not control, safety is trust. And if they cannot learn that, then you do not keep sacrificing yourself on the altar of their comfort. You let their fear be theirs. You let their coping strategy be theirs. You stop trying to rescue them from their own pattern by drowning in it with them, because you are not here to be someone's calm while you live in anxiety. You are here to be loved in a way that makes your nervous system rest too. They can love you and still choose avoidance, because they are loyal to control, not connection. And that is one of the most confusing heartbreaks you can experience, because your mind keeps trying to make it make sense. You think, if they love me, they would show up. If they love me, they would talk. If they love me, they wouldn't disappear the moment things get real. And when those expectations aren't met, you start doing something painful. You start questioning yourself. You start questioning your worth, your tone, your needs, your timing, your intensity. As if love is a performance you failed instead of a bond they refuse to protect. But avoidance is not always the absence of love. Sometimes it is the presence of fear wearing the mask of independence. Sometimes it is a survival strategy that learned one core rule. Stay in control, stay safe. And control for them doesn't always look like domination. It looks like emotional distance. It looks like keeping conversation shallow. It looks like changing the subject when feelings come up. It looks like disappearing when accountability is required. It looks like needing space the moment intimacy asks for effort. It looks like pulling away the moment they feel the relationship has the power to hurt them. So yes, they can love you. And yes, they can still choose avoidance. Because connection demands surrender, and surrender is the one thing they don't trust. Connection demands the risk of being seen. It demands the risk of being needed. It demands the risk of disappointing you. It demands the risk of you disappointing them. And if they have built their entire emotional life around not needing anyone too much, not being dependent, not being exposed, then love becomes a threat, not because you are dangerous, but because intimacy is. This is why you can be the best thing in their life and still trigger their shutdown. You can be gentle, consistent, loyal, and instead of that making them relax, it can make them feel pressure. Because pressure, to them, is not you asking for too much. Pressure is the feeling of responsibility landing on their chest. Pressure is the feeling of, if I stay, I have to show up. If I commit, I have to be consistent. If I let this in, I can't hide anymore. And the moment they feel that, they reach for the one thing that has always made them feel powerful: distance. Control is seductive because it creates the illusion of safety. When they control the pace, they don't have to feel overwhelmed. When they control the closeness, they don't have to feel exposed. When they control the conversation, they don't have to admit vulnerability. When they control their availability, they don't have to face the fear of failing you. And if you are someone who loves openly, you will feel that imbalance, because you are trying to build a relationship while they are trying to manage a threat. You are trying to connect while they are trying to regulate. That's why you'll notice the pattern. The moment you get close, they pull away. The moment you need reassurance, they go quiet. The moment you ask a direct question, they become vague. The moment you talk about the future, they shift the topic. The moment you express hurt, they become defensive. And it leaves you standing in emotional confusion, because you're dealing with someone who wants love, but only on terms that keep them in control. And the worst part is, control can look like confidence. It can look like someone who knows what they want, someone who doesn't do drama, someone who isn't needy, someone who values independence, and at first you might admire it. You might even feel safe around it, until you realize that their independence is not peace, it is armor. Their calm is not emotional maturity, it is emotional avoidance. Their strength is not the ability to love deeply, it is the ability to detach quickly. And when you finally need real partnership, real presence, real repair, you discover that control is what they protect even more than they protect the relationship. This is why you can't take it personally, even though it feels personal, because you start thinking, why can they show up for their job, for friends, for strangers, but not for me? And the answer is painful. Intimacy is the one place where they lose control. Intimacy is the one place where feelings become unavoidable. Intimacy is the one place where they can't hide behind productivity, performance, or distance. And if they don't have the tools to handle that, they will choose avoidance, not because you're unworthy, but because closeness is where their fear lives. Now I want you to hear something that will protect your heart. Love without capacity is not a relationship, it's a longing. Love without accountability is not safety, it's a cycle. Love without presence is not intimacy, it's inconsistency. And you can feel compassion for their fear. You can understand their pattern. You can even see the wounded part of them that wants to love you better. But you cannot build a life on someone's potential. You cannot build a future on someone's feelings if their behavior keeps choosing control over connection. Because control over connection always costs someone something, and usually it costs you. It costs your peace, it costs your self-esteem, it costs your nervous system, it costs your ability to relax into love. You start tiptoeing, you start overthinking, you start bargaining with your own needs, you start measuring how much truth is all owed before they withdraw, and slowly you start becoming smaller because you think smallness will keep them close. But smallness never creates connection, it only creates silence. And silence is where you disappear. So your power begins when you stop trying to outlove their avoidance. When you stop treating their distance like a challenge you can win by being more patient. When you stop negotiating your worth for the privilege of their presence. Because someone who is loyal to control will keep taking the parts of you that don't threaten their control. Your softness, your support, your loyalty, your understanding, while avoiding the parts that require them to change, accountability, emotional honesty, repair, consistency. And that is not love that holds you, it's love that uses you as comfort. You deserve connection, not management. You deserve a partner who can stay present when emotions rise, not someone who disappears and calls it space. You deserve someone who can hear your feelings without making you feel ashamed for having them. You deserve someone who can choose you without needing the threat of losing you to wake up. And if they truly love you, the love will become visible in their willingness to grow, to communicate, to repair, to show up consistently, even when their instinct says run. But if they keep choosing control, then let the truth be clean. You cannot love someone into surrender when they worship control. And you do not have to keep offering your heart to someone who treats closeness like danger, because the right love will not require you to shrink. It will require you to be fully yourself, openly, safely, and without fear. The more you chase, explain, or prove yourself, the more the pattern rewards their withdrawal. And you end up training the distance. And I know that sentence can sting, because it feels unfair. It feels like you are being punished for loving. It feels like the more sincere you are, the worse it gets. It feels like the more you try to save the connection, the more the connection slips through your fingers. And that confusion is exactly how this dynamic traps good-hearted people. Because you think effort should create closeness, but in this pattern, effort can accidentally create more distance. Not because your love is wrong, but because chasing becomes part of the system. When you chase, you are trying to restore connection. You are trying to get back to safety. You are trying to bring warmth back into the room. But the avoidant nervous system often experiences pursuit as pressure, and pressure triggers the very thing they are loyal to, withdrawal. So they pull back, not always consciously, but automatically, because distance is their regulation. And then you feel the pullback, and your body interprets it as danger, so you chase harder. You explain more. You send the paragraph. You try to fix it faster. And the more you do that, the more their body feels crowded, and the more they retreat. It becomes a loop where your love becomes fuel for their avoidance, not because love is bad, but because the roles have been established. You regulate by connecting. They regulate by escaping. This is how you end up training the distance. Because every time they withdraw and you rush in, the relationship learns a lesson. Withdrawal works. It works because it buys them space. It works because it restores the sense of control. It works because you do the emotional labor of repairing the tension. It works because you lower your standards to keep them close. And if it works, the pattern repeats. The nervous system loves what works. It doesn't care if it's healthy. It cares if it brings relief. So if their withdrawal brings relief, and your chase brings them comfort without accountability, the system becomes stronger, not weaker. And you might not see it at first, because it doesn't always look like you're chasing. Sometimes it looks like you being the bigger person. Sometimes it looks like you being patient. Sometimes it looks like you giving them space, while still waiting by the door emotionally. Sometimes it looks like you accepting a half apology just to stop the tension. Sometimes it looks like you swallowing your needs, because you don't want to push them away. But all of it has the same effect. It removes the consequences of their withdrawal. And when consequences are removed, change is delayed. This is why you can become exhausted in this dynamic without understanding why. You feel like you're always doing something, always adjusting, always managing. You're monitoring their tone, their timing, their mood. You're choosing your words carefully. You're trying to be calm enough so you don't trigger shutdown. You're trying to be low maintenance so they don't feel trapped. And what you don't realize is that you're slowly building a relationship around their fear. Your entire love becomes shaped by what they can tolerate. Your truth becomes filtered through what they won't run from. Your needs become negotiable because you're afraid that insisting on them will cost you the relationship. And then something heartbreaking happens. You start associating anxiety with love. You start feeling relief when they respond, and you confuse that relief for closeness. You start craving the tiny moments of warmth because warmth has become rare. You start settling for crumbs because crumbs feel better than hunger, and the avoidant partner senses that they can keep you with small gestures, small check-ins, occasional intimacy, just enough to reset your hope. That becomes another way the distance is trained, because if you keep returning to hope without repair, the pattern learns it doesn't have to transform. It only has to soothe you occasionally. Now, listen closely, because this is where your power begins. You stop rewarding withdrawal. You stop chasing distance. You stop making the relationship easier for them when they make it harder for you. That doesn't mean you become cold. It doesn't mean you become cruel. It means you become clear. It means you stop offering the same level of access to someone who keeps choosing emotional absence. It means you stop doing emotional labor for two people. It means you stop proving your love by tolerating neglect. And I know that's hard, because it feels like you're not trying. But the truth is, you have been trying so much that you forgot you were allowed to be met. A relationship is not a one-person rescue mission. It's not you building a bridge while they stand on the other side with their arms crossed, deciding when they feel like walking across. Love is mutual movement. Love is two people choosing to stay in the conversation. Love is two people choosing repair. Love is two people protecting the bond, not one person chasing the bond while the other avoids it. When you stop chasing, something changes inside you first. Your nervous system stops being held hostage by their mood. You stop scanning for signs of withdrawal. You stop over-functioning. You stop living in anticipation of their next disappearance. And that shift can feel like grief at first, because you're letting go of the illusion that you can control the outcome if you just love hard enough. But grief is not failure. Grief is clarity. It's the moment you accept, I cannot carry this alone anymore. And here's the deeper truth. The distance was never trained by one moment. It was trained by repetition. So it won't change in one moment either. It changes when you consistently respond differently. When withdrawal is met with boundaries, not pursuit. When silence is met with consequences, not pleading. When inconsistency is met with standards, not extra patience. When your needs are met with respect, not dismissal. And if they truly care, this will either invite them into growth or reveal that they preferred the old dynamic where you worked harder and they stayed safer. This is why your most powerful move is not another explanation, not another paragraph, not another attempt to prove your heart. Your most powerful move is to stop training the distance and start training the standard. The standard that says, I will not chase someone who withdraws. I will not beg for communication. I will not accept love that only appears when it's convenient. I will not keep doing emotional labor alone. I can love you and still require consistency. I can care and still protect myself. And if you cannot meet me there, I will not abandon myself trying to drag you into connection. Because the moment you stop chasing is the moment you stop feeding the pattern. And when you stop feeding it, you finally get to see the truth. Not the truth of what they say, but the truth of what they choose. Their loyalty to space can make you feel powerless, until you realize your real power is boundaries and self-respect, not persuasion. And that realization is a turning point, because it shifts you from begging to being grounded. It shifts you from proving to deciding. It shifts you from chasing someone's capacity to protecting your own heart. When an avoidant is loyal to space, it can feel like nothing you do matters. You can be gentle, you can be patient, you can communicate, you can cry, you can stay calm, you can try harder, and still they pull away. They disappear into silence like it's a safe room. They call it needing time, needing space, needing clarity. But what you feel is the same, you feel alone. And the loneliness inside a relationship is one of the most humiliating pains. Because you're technically loved, technically chosen, technically together. But emotionally you're abandoned. That's why you feel powerless. Because you start believing your love has to compete with their escape. You start believing the relationship depends on your ability to say the perfect thing, to time it correctly, to be easy enough for them to stay. You start turning yourself into a translator, trying to interpret their withdrawal as something you can manage. You start reading signs, you start tracking patterns, you start watching their mood like a weather forecast, hoping you can predict the next storm. And while you're doing all of that, your nervous system is quietly suffering. You're living in anticipation. You're living in uncertainty. You're living in a constant emotional negotiation where your needs are treated like a request that might be approved or denied. But here's the truth. Their loyalty to space makes you feel powerless only as long as you believe persuasion is your job. Persuasion is the belief that if you just explain your pain better, they will understand. If you just love more gently, they will stop running. If you just become less needy, they will choose you. If you just become the exception, their pattern will dissolve. And the reason persuasion is so seductive is because it gives you hope and control at the same time. It makes you feel like there is still something you can do. It keeps you in motion. It keeps you invested. But it also keeps you stuck, because you end up doing emotional labor for someone who is not taking responsibility for their own behavior. Self-respect is different. Self-respect does not ask, how do I convince them to stay? It asks, what am I available for? Self-respect does not beg for communication, it requires it. Self-respect does not chase space, it honors distance as information. Self-respect does not interpret silence as a challenge, it interprets silence as a choice. And this is the moment your power returns, when you stop trying to control their fear and start controlling your own standards. Boundaries are what make self-respect visible. And I don't mean boundaries as threats, I mean boundaries as decisions. Decisions like, I will not stay in conversations where I am being stonewalled. Decisions like, I will not accept disappearing acts as conflict resolution. Decisions like, I will not keep offering full emotional access to someone who gives me partial effort. Decisions like, I will not accept a relationship where repair is always delayed and my pain is always minimized. Decisions like, I will not keep making it easy for someone to keep losing me in small ways. And yes, the first time you set a boundary, it can feel like you're being harsh. It can feel like you're being cold. It can feel like you're becoming someone you're not. Because you're used to proving your love through patience, through forgiveness, through over-understanding. You're used to being the one who makes it okay. But boundaries are not you becoming cruel. Boundaries are you becoming honest. They are you finally treating your heart like it matters. Now, when an avoidant is loyal to space, the moment you introduce boundaries, you will often see the truth of what they valued. If they valued your access more than they valued your well-being, they will react with entitlement. They will call you dramatic. They will call you controlling. They will say you're overreacting. They will act like your boundary is a punishment. But a boundary is not a punishment, it is a limit. And the reason they call it punishment is because it removes the comfort they had, the comfort of being able to withdraw without consequence and return without repair. If they truly care, they may still feel discomfort, but they will move toward responsibility. They will ask, what do you need? They will reflect. They will try to communicate even when they're triggered. They will make changes you can see over time. They will stop using space as a weapon and start using space with respect, with communication, with clarity. Because real space is not silence that punishes. Real space is time that is agreed upon, time that is communicated, time that includes reassurance, not abandonment. Your power is also in the fact that you stop measuring love by intensity and start measuring it by consistency. Avoidant relationships can be intense because there are highs and lows, closeness and distance, relief and anxiety. That roller coaster can make you feel like the relationship is meaningful because it affects you so much. But consistency is the proof of love, not intensity. Consistency is what builds safety. Consistency is what makes you feel calm. Consistency is what lets your nervous system rest. And if their loyalty is to space at the cost of consistency, your boundary becomes the line that says, I will not live on a roller coaster anymore. And I need you to understand something. When you stop trying to persuade them, you stop giving them control over your emotional state. You stop letting their withdrawal decide whether you feel worthy today. You stop letting their silence decide whether you feel loved. You stop letting their mood decide whether you have peace. That is what self-respect gives you. It gives you an internal anchor. It gives you the ability to say, even if they pull away, I will not pull away from myself. Even if they choose distance, I will choose dignity. Even if they cannot show up, I will not shrink to keep them. This is why boundaries are so emotional, because they require you to tolerate the discomfort of not chasing. They require you to sit with the ache of silence without rushing to fix it. They require you to let someone feel the consequences of their choices without rescuing them. And that is hard when you love deeply. But it is also the beginning of your freedom, because you learn that you do not have to perform to be loved. You do not have to beg for basic care. You do not have to convince someone to treat you with respect. So let their loyalty to space teach you something. Not that you are powerless, but that you are using the wrong kind of power. You are using persuasion, explanation, proving, hoping to create connection. But your real power is your standards. Your real power is your boundaries. Your real power is your self-respect. And when you live from that place, one of two things happens. Either they rise to meet you with real effort and real maturity, or they reveal that they were never capable of the love you needed. And both outcomes are a win, because you stop living in confusion. Because you were never meant to fight for a love that runs. You were meant to receive a love that stays.